So we're a little bit more porous than usual. I think there actually is something I really want to talk about. I think I'm debating whether or not it's appropriate to talk about. So I'm going to. And, really, it's going to just sound nuts. I know that. And, but I can tell you that I get more than a few DMs of people saying, oh, thank God, this does make sense to me. And so this is for the people, this is for the people out there who this makes sense to. And then for the people it doesn't make sense to, I don't know what to say. Other than just here, for people it doesn't make sense to, you can look at it from the perspective of this is entertaining, that you get to watch the weirdos. And then for people who it does make sense to, you can just recognize that you are a higher being. Like, just joking. Not at all. So, so this is what I want to talk about. I want to talk about if the world were built by women, and women's initiation, and why we only have boys and girls in this world, and so few women and men, so few adults, and really how devastating that is to have children who have not been initiated into their own power, their own sexuality, their own wisdom, running the world. And then even those who have been initiated into their power and their wisdom have not been, for the most part, initiated into the realm of sexuality. And the realm of sexuality, I would posit, is its own realm with its own rules. And it is a top tier game. It's a high level game that everything prior you need in order to even get in the door. And when you enter, there's a few things that you lose. The primary one is that everything you did prior that made you successful now makes you a failure. And things like, intellect really is a great impediment, especially in the initial stages. You can pick it up later once you stabilize in the involuntary, but even then it's not necessarily beneficial. You trade that in, really for wisdom, but intellect, rational thinking, the capacity to project with your mind and what's going to happen, because you're entering a realm of total and complete uncertainty. So what you want is presence. You want your capacity to be with uncertainty. This is just one example. Your capacity to amass is important. Your capacity, all of the women's capacities to lure people for purposes of proximal power, those are deadly in here. They'll get you knocked out of flight faster than anything. And so you have a different order, you have a different set of values, but you really have a different set of rituals. And I am doing what I'm doing because there's this funny Instagram that says, we do this not because it's easy, but because we thought it would be. And I'm doing this, it's not because I believe there are people who want to be whatever I am, people who sit on chairs and talk about things. There are people who want to do that. That isn't, I really, anybody who knows me, and many people who don't would know, I would just prefer to be making out. But I happen to be very clear on the order of things and how this next iteration of humanity is going to have to go. And I do agree with the Dalai Lama, and I use him as my authority, because I wouldn't be authority enough for you. Because I'm a woman who has sex. There is no way that, my status is going to bypass all of your objections. So I'm going to rely on the Dalai Lama, who said, it will be Western women. And I always, this is a place I do argue with him just a little bit, because I don't know that it will solely be Western women. I think it'll be turned on women and the men who support them that change the world. But he says it'll be Western women, and it'll just be Western women. Men, I don't even know what you guys are going to be doing. But that's why you should listen to me. See, I include you. Anyway, so if it's going to be Western woman, if it's going to be woman, then you have an issue, because we don't have any rites of passage for women. We remain very much girls, and this is the signifier is our power. It has to do with our absence, our capacity to conform, our capacity to meet male metrics. Meaning, the ideas of success, not to define the world, not to transmit a deeper, unrecognized truth that hasn't been spoken to date, and a fundamental sense of the locus of power being outside of ourselves. That's what makes us girls. And to fawn, to placate, to put him on a pedestal, to put anybody on a pedestal, is insanity. Just crazy. I mean, each one of us has our very own Buddha right here inside. There's no need to look outside. But although you can appreciate people the way they decorated their Buddha, but you really. It's all the same, It's from our conversation yesterday when we were talking about in Kabbalah, they say it's all the same substance. Everything is the same substance. So being like, ooh, the substance located over there in jeans is, more important than the substance located over here in a dress. Like it's insanity. But it's how we have it set up. Why? Because it hasn't been Western women who's been changing the world, who doesn't operate by those principles. When she's not a girl, the girl adopts the principles of the existing world. And competition is one of those. Competition, conquering, amassing, and alluring, all of these things, right? But that's not true when you get into the deep. No, I do not want to sound like one of those people on Instagram. That is not true when you get into realized feminine principles. It's a different world. You can't even describe it. I was saying, people who enter into the feminine, it's like people who can memorize, and often, the first stage is you do not understand poetry at all. And then all of a sudden you can recite the poetry, and you can quote poetry, but you have no idea the meaning. And then there comes a place where you start to flicker. Oh, wait a minute, these words might mean something different than what I interpreted. And then there comes the point where you can really, what all of the poems mean. And then there comes a point where you can write poetry. And most people don't even get to most people are like, I don't even understand poetry. I don't want to hear it. So it goes pretty far out. And so people can't even imagine a world of, in the hippie polyamorous people call it compersion. Buddhists call it sympathetic joy, but where you wouldn't begin to think of a world where you didn't include the people that you care for in all of your experiences, or that you would preclude a person from having the experiences that they want and desire. That looks like insanity. That looks like imprisonment, not anything close to love. And we, as I often say, we mistake hate for love, attachment for it's so crazy because we mistake this for this. The tendency to pull in, lock down, and hold for the truth of what love is, which is to free people. And so I would say my experiences and why I chose a feminine path was I was very clear that as a people, we have to make it to that place. We have to make it beyond conquering. We have to make it beyond competition. We have to make it beyond consumption, amassing. These are finite rules, you know, for a finite game where all you do is swim around circular in your misery, and that we had to find a way to break through. So all of this being said, I'm going to tell you things now that are going to sound weird. And unless those sounded weird, those may have sounded weird. If those sounded weird, I would not go on to part 2. I'm going to say, because I'm going to talk to you about how we bring women into initiation. You know, when I went to Italy, I went to Sicily, and I went to the Temple of Venus, which is still one of the most profound experiences of my life. Felt profound, meaning sometimes you have profound experiences that you know should be profound experiences, and so you're kind of in theoretical awe. You're like, this is awesome. And then sometimes you have something that just knocks you on your duff. You're just like, you didn't even expect it to have an impact. And that's how I felt when I was at the Temple of Venus. Like, I felt the power coming from the ground. And I felt, if anybody has ever done LSD, there's an experience where your life explains itself retroactively, and everything makes sense that ever happened. Everything that you wanted to push away, like you're like, oh my God, this had to happen. And then you understand life is perfect. That's the end message of LSD. So I had this experience where my whole life made sense. Everything about me made sense. Finally, standing at the Temple of Venus, where these women would do demonstrations of sexual acts with the head priestess guiding all of the women as, in a sense, her women, and then these men coming in to have their healing. And you can feel the power from below. It is a profound experience if you can ever go. I say, because it's actually kind of beautiful, but all of you have to go up this huge hill, and then you walk past all of these Catholic churches, and the Catholic churches, and there's a lot of them. You know, every third storefront is a Catholic church in this town, Erice, my hometown. And so you're walking, and all of the churches have been, I mean, they're just restored. They're beautiful. You know, they're in there polishing the pews, incredible, just beautiful. And then you just hit this little dilapidated, just ruin. It's basically ruins. There's just a few columns and a table and where a bath used to be. Like, it's just it's broken, but it's infinitely more powerful than those churches, which is so interesting. No matter what you do, you can't tear it down. But it also says, you know, it's the only feminine structure there. And look, look at the state that it's in, and look at the state the feminine's in. And the whole thing was profound. I mean, maybe if all of my woes come to an end, I'll just bring anybody who wants to go. We'll just go to the Temple of Venus and just sob, I think is what'll happen. But so when I stood there, you know, you can really see these women, and you can understand that there's a lineage that's passed, and that lineage that is passed because feminine wisdom can only be transmitted. It can't be communicated. This is what is one of those things that, again, is very challenging to understand. No matter how much I sit here on this wonderful Zoom, I'm always a barker in this position. I could list out every single movement of an eyelash that you would have to do to have a certain kind of experience, and I did in the sutras, and you still will not touch it until you have transmission. And that's just the sad truth. And it's a sad truth because transmission is a very humbling experience, and you have to show up prepared for it or it just doesn't work. And the beauty for me of the feminine is that it isn't, you can't buy your way in, you can't talk your way in, but the good news is you can't get your way kicked out either. It's all determined, it's all self-organizing. You know, you can impress people in various lineages. You aren't, because Eros, or, you know, the feminine doesn't believe in hierarchy. And it doesn't, because it knows that only you can make the choice. You're in the relationship with Eros, you're not in a relationship with a person. So a person, there's no lie that a person can grant or take away your, whatever you wish to call it, your Erosiment. Nobody can do that. And that's why I like it, but it's why some people don't like it, because you're having to be intimate with invisible, subtle realms. And nobody ever believes you that nobody can grant it to you. And so, you know, the first, I don't know, maybe 10 years are finagling to get somebody to give it to you. And boy, is that hard bottom to hit after you've kissed all that ass. And people even told you nobody can give it to you. You know, I say, like, I'm a good, you know, I'm a good Olympic coach, but I can't do the exercise for you. I can't, you know what I mean? And you may not be a natural. There's a whole series of things. And all I can do is really give you very difficult and grueling assignments. And then I can say, like, that isn't quite it. And then I can say, come on, buddy, you can do it. Like, but it's all internal. And so, you know, that's a really hard thing. But you know what? That's what adults do. Adults do it for themselves. And then they bring something. And, you know, children rely on external sources to give it to them. And so if you look at our entire spiritual industry, it's all based on the idea that it can be given to you. So that tells me that what we're breeding are not adults, we're breeding children. And so we have to change that, because remember, it will be Western woman, it won't be Western girl that changes the world. And I believe the world could stand some changing. I like it as it is. I'm not like, you know, I'm not like a woman who comes home and sees her husband as a, well, I'm not a woman who has a husband, but who comes home and sees her husband as a project and is constantly trying to change him. I like the basic structure of the world. I think it's beautiful. I just want to add benefit to it. And I think it could use some of that for sure. It could use some tender love and care and appreciation, a lot of appreciation for, you know, it's a great world. And it gets beaten up a lot, you know? And so, so you have to have transmission. And it's very much like flying on the wings of an eagle. That's, you learn via another woman how to enter into the arts. And the arts are the arts of sexual energies. And, you know, I was thinking about this morning, because I was thinking how, you know, we've made men in charge of sex, which is bonkers. I mean, I was like, really, like, that's what is it? The fox in the hen house? I like, that is just crazy. And then, so you've made men in charge of sex and power, okay? And so then you have all of these women who actually have the sex, asking men how to do it, or, you know, relying on male ideas of what it should look like or be like or feel like. And that men have no idea. They just know they want more. And so, so then you just have these women contorting themselves for this false ideal offered by men who could never tell you. And so then you have this chronic low-grade disappointment in men, because it's like, okay, tell me what to do. You know, you're in charge of sex. What do we do here? And it's like, oh, you go get STDs and pregnancies, and then you fuck me a lot. It's like, okay, that's not how you do it, by the way. And so to determine to be somebody who would define the field of sexuality for purposes of evolving women, because you can't have men until you have women. You have boys. First you have women, then you have men. They're boys until then. there is no way for a man to go through the initiations, because the initiations are all sexual, and girls can't have sex. They can project all kinds of images and absent themselves for things to be done to their bodies, but they can't have sex. And I say this like 40, 50-year-old girls. I don't mean, young girls, obviously they can't, but I'm talking about the fact that you have these women who haven't initiated into the arts. Eros is often spoken of as the juice that pushes the bud open. And so I think of it as it's the juice that pushes us into our realization or our evolution. And so you have to learn how to work with that, which is a radically different skill. So it has to be transmission, woman to woman, period. How do you do that, though? How do you pass that on? And this is where the world gets really crazy. And I'm going to say, I talk about Indra's net, which is something that if you've done psychedelics, you may have seen. But Indra's net is this endless net. And here's the weird thing about it, is that people have actually seen it. So you do psychedelics, you have this experience, and then you read about other people have seen the same thing that you've seen. I just think that's so cool. Like, I haven't done ayahuasca, but I heard, what's his name that I like? The guy that I like, who talks a lot about ayahuasca. His brother is Dennis McKenna. Terrence McKenna talks about the machine people, that when people do ayahuasca, they see the machine people. I haven't seen those, but he said that it's just this common thing. Well, so it can be that you do psychedelics and you see Indra's net, and when you see it, it's one of those things. If you see it, I don't know how to explain it, but it's almost like having wisdom installed in a different way. It's just installed just from the sight of it. You understand the nature of interdependence, and you will never go back. And anyway, when you see this Indra's net, it's just all of these eyes looking at eyes, which are the nodes, and then these connection points that make up the net. And I often think of that as that's how the world best designed would be. The nodes would be women, and the men would be conduits in between the nodes. And they would be shuttling very much like I think it's hyphae in the mycelial network that are transmitting information and nutrients. And so each woman, when she evolves from girl, becomes a node in the net. And that becomes something that that keeps the network of Eros going. How am I doing here? Am I losing anybody? Austin, how am I doing?
This is beautiful.
Oh, good. Okay, I'm doing okay. Okay, I just felt like I might be really far out there, because sometimes I just go to Nicole land and I forget to come back to Zoom land. Oh, so how my education went was, I had people prior that were fantastic, but my real training happened with Ray and the community that he ran, and Laura Jean, his right-hand woman, and who had more experience than I had. And so she held the position. I would just call number one, and I was number two. And how it went was she had tremendous holding and wisdom and care and orgasm. And really, to be honest, I had a ton of attention on Ray. but it was her coming through him if I dared see. And it was her who was keeping him straight. It was her telling him what my orgasm actually needed, my Eros, whatever you wish to call it. It was her who was guiding the entire thing. It was her making him a great, stable man who would transmit to many women for purposes of their freedom. And then, but most importantly, it was her who was keeping him with the amount of sustenance that is required in a man to keep him from greed. That's really the best way I can put it. There is a point where all of a sudden, you know, I talk a lot about when a woman gets filled up there, but there is a point where a man gets filled up, and then suddenly it's like something pops and the greed impulse shifts, and it doesn't quite know what to do. So you have to guide it. Oh, here's what you do. You use that same exact thing, but now for purposes of liberation. And so you have to keep filling him in such a way that that everything is in balance. Balance is your salvation in Eros. If you get out of balance, then that's where you have greed or shutdown. And so you're filling him, and then you're talking to him about how to use what you've filled him with at each new level, how to use it in such a way that he's of benefit, while concurrently drawing out the klesha that tend to go, because every time you up level somebody, you up level their klesha as well. So you have to clean out those klesha in order for the next place to be pure. And then, all of the training of how to express these various new levels of consciousness. Well, that's really what a man brings to what a woman brings to a man. And then, and fundamentally what she's training him to do is how to skillfully carry these energies, both laterally, but also most of the time it will be to a lower altitude, if that makes sense. So you're going to, because Laura Jean, for example, with me, was filling me. And so there's a lot of things that Ray was going to encounter with a hungry woman. He was going down into the trenches with all these, and these demands and all of these things. And so she had to keep him very clear so that he remained sensitive. It's very easy to get mad at hungry women. We're duplicitous as hell, and greedy and mean and manipulative and all of the things that starving people are. And he would, she would send him in there with rations to ensure that we all got fed, we'll say. And she had to make sure that he wasn't just going to spill the whole bucket. It's very easy. So you also have to have a tremendous amount of optionality and equanimity, so that you're carrying this precious resource. And you don't want it to be that the woman who's the most cunning gets all of the resource. And it's not just because it's a waste. It's because anybody who nurses on too much, you render them incompetent. So it's bad for their karma. And it's definitely bad for his karma, because he's now bankrupt. And you got to kick him out of the sky for a period of time. So you have a 1 and a 2. That's really the way that you build the network, is you have a woman who has more surplus, and then you have a woman who has less, a woman who has more wisdom, a woman who has less, and then you use the man. I don't know if I like the word use, but you use them. We objectify you. We only want you for your, you use him for his conduit capacity, and so that you can meet inside of him. Because if two women meet directly, then the tendency is that there'll be this bond that locks, and if it locks, the energy can't flow through it. And so there's like very strong emotional holding, but not a lot of Eros, because Eros is dynamic. So you have to have something in between that it can move through. And see, it's a perfect system. This woman's surplus gets emptied. So she feels this relief. It's like having too much milk in your breasts, you want something to suck on them. And so she gets to dump her milk, that'll just keep regenerating, right? As long as something's sucking on them, that milk just keeps coming, and it feels good, and the nipples, everything is great. She's happy, and she's full. One time I said to my dear friend Reese, how come you are, he was very generous in terms of mentoring people. And I said, how can you mentor so many people? He said, well, once you get yours, your only joy really is watching other people get theirs. And so that is her position. It's not that she's it's not that she's in the hierarchy. It's not that she's better. It's just she just got hers before you got yours, and it'll come that you get yours before somebody else gets theirs, provided you don't fail your that one transition where you go from taking to giving. But so she just has hers, and now her position is, milk mama. And then the guy who's in between, what he gets is all this electricity moving through him that burns out his sense of self. And so he gets to have this pure sense of being, and gets a heck of a ride in terms of how he gets there. Right, you can go sit in a cave, or you can have these two women meeting at the orgasm spot inside of you. That's up to you. But it's grueling. It is. I joke, but it's grueling in its way, because you constantly are getting adjusted to drop the self. And 99.99999% of what we know of sexuality is an increase rather than a decrease of self. So it's fantasy, desire, hunger, and so a good one will keep spanking that for purposes of the man and the two. I want to make it. It's because you don't want her in the long run getting more than she can without the education, and that was one of the things. Ray, I have a huge appetite. I mean, really big appetite. According to people who have big appetites. And so I got Ray, and I was like, oh my God, I can have like 6 or 7 hours of ohms a day. I was in heaven, and Laura was like, we might want to make sure she has some of the ideas about what to do with that included. Because otherwise you just end up in sensation. And sensation isn't far enough. You need actual wisdom. Sensation can fuel your way to wisdom, but it isn't wisdom. So you have to have the wisdom injected as well. And so, Laura would say, let's turn it down a little bit on Nicole today on her juice, and let's make sure that she understands, some fundamental thing, like, let's make sure Nicole understands that your capacity to have orgasm is determined by your willingness to offer orgasm. So, really simple things in theory, not necessarily in practice. And so, he just gets wisdom for his ability to stay in the game, in a sense, and willingness to take instruction, the instruction being only to drop off self. And I say that because you hear to take instruction, and people really want instruction how to be in the uncertainty of orgasm, and there isn't any, but there is instruction, like stay aroused no matter what, just stay in arousal. That's all I say that, I don't know, 150 times a day. Just people, Nicole, what's happening? I don't understand. And I'll say, just stay in arousal. Find the arousal. Where's the arousal? You have to find the arousal, because the arousal will give you all of the information that you need. The arousal, the reason you don't know is because the lights are turned off. And so people are like, what do I do? Tell me what to do. It's like, turn the lights on. It's written on all of the walls in the room you're in. Just turn the lights on. And it's like, I know, I understand. But you have to tell me how to turn the lights on. And like, turn them on. Just turn them on. And so most of it is muscle memory, just a memory, like just turn the lights on. That's it. And for women especially, this is very difficult as I said, the locus of power is outside of ourselves. So we're like, how do I turn the lights on? Will you turn the lights on for me? Where are the lights? And it's endless. And so you just have to keep saying the same thing until the flash comes. I think I just turned the lights on. This is shocking. Yes, now just don't do anything that turns the lights off. And what are the things that turn the lights off? Just look, all the instructions are on the wall. You just look and they'll tell you in the moment what you do to keep the lights on. It's very simple. And here's the thing, we all know. Everyone knows. Everyone knows. But we feel like we can negotiate with ourselves, right? Like, I know if in that moment, I have a duplicitous intention that I don't tell anyone, and then I have a big smile on my face, that's going to turn the lights off. I know that. But I tell myself, oh no, see, this time it's a little different because, and you're just like negotiating as the lights are dimming. And then you say, I don't know how the lights turned on. It's like that. I mean, it is deceptively simple how you do it. I think that's part of the issue with Eros or with orgasm itself is how simple it is to do and how difficult it seems for people to do. But most of that's that you're walking through your klesha. Most of that is that you're walking through lifetimes of being indoctrinated that the most powerful force on the planet is evil. That's all. So you have a 1 and a 2. And this is the most profound relationship I think you can have. I think in Tibetan Buddhism, it's the regular consort relationship. But I think in Eros, which has moved, really to the primarily feminine version, where you have to build this net, it's going to be, the primary woman on one side, and then the receiving woman on the other side. And there's a whole set of rules for who both has to be in order for it to work. If this woman is getting too much play, and often this woman will pull because she can pull from the biology. The number 2 can pull from the biology, and she pulls him out, and all of a sudden he just turns into a monster, very ignorant monster, because he doesn't have the wisdom pumping through him. He doesn't have Eros. The lights went out for him at that point. And now all he knows is I must devour no matter what. And all he does is eat. And she doesn't have the power because her power comes from 1. She doesn't have the power to break out of it. And so if this happens, there's really just like a feeding frenzy with this woman just kind of not interested in the process anymore. And this woman now with a guy who's a monster, and the whole thing is polarized. And that's what happens. Is women, we were trained, as I said, to be competitive. And you can't, with competition, we cannot get where we need to go. It's just that simple. It will destroy the fabric of what we need to create the network that we can tap into and get the power that everyone needs. I'm theoretically big on universal basic income. I'm in practice very big on it in terms of Eros. I think everyone needs their own logon, their own, what is it? Username, password, whatever it is, to the network so that they can get their daily dose and, contribute what they need to contribute, contribute what they need to contribute so that everyone has enough to live on. And there's, right now, we are not a surplus-based world in terms of Eros. And so most people are erotically starving. And I mean, that shows up primarily in complaint. It shows up in judgment fixing, and comparing. Judge, fix, and compare. Those are signs of starvation. And, as is cynicism, apathy, and resignation. Those are the other side. So you see those, and that's just it's like people having who didn't have vitamin C, people having scurvy, and you're just like, oh, what is that? Oh, they didn't have limes. It's like, oh, you see those things, that is just a lack of Eros. I can guarantee you that if you turn the arousal up, those things go. They go. And then if you turn it up very high, so do greed, hatred, and delusion. And all you did was turn up the arousal. So, but to do so, we have to have these systems of women being initiated into their own sexuality. And so relationship structures have to change. That's what I'm saying. This is what I'm saying. And, people often have this presumption that I'm in any way polyamorous, or any way ethical non-monogamy, or in any way, there's another one. I'm not a polycule either. None of these things. I'm a woman who is in a network. And for me, I have a lot of milk in my breast. And so I have to have a place to surplus it out. But it is rigorous, and like people's idea of healthy relationships in a long-term marriage are nothing compared to what it takes to actually be in a consort relationship that's based in a network of ensuring that all women have the resources that they need to get free. It is harrowing, because you're living with every single woman's facade active. Like you turn up arousal, you think the coping mechanisms go down. They go way up before. So you think of the worst stereotypes of women, they go way up before the karma burns out, exhausts itself. And so you're dealing with high intensity women, and high intensity confusion, and whatever her tendency is, it is. So that's where I'm going to start, and then we'll see where it goes from there. I decided I'd open it because it's open in my life right now, and I have a desire for for women to understand that it's possible. It is possible to get yours. That's the underlying question for most women is, can I or will I ever get mine? And the hard part is that yours is sitting inside of your body, and that it needs to be turned on with arousal. It's not that you don't have it, it's that you need to turn it up. And then there are ways to do that. And, that's what I'm trying to train in now, because it's so counter to our cultural habits. You don't just go up and offer your erotic sensation to somebody, but you do in Eros. That opens the door. You don't talk about your desire openly. You skirt around it and hope that somebody figures it out. You disengage somewhat. You try to look cool. There's all of these things. You don't even get in the gate, much less the mansion, with that stuff, the stuff that works in the everyday world. And so I want to begin to train women. How do you genuinely enter the realm of Eros in such a way that you walk in, you plug in, you're out, you don't get kicked out immediately for stupid things, and but that don't look stupid. That's the other thing that I want to say is they look great out there. You are getting kudos up the yin yang for out there, but then you put them here, and the other sisters are like, "What are you doing?" That looks so weird. Don't do that anymore, and like, don't, in the everyday world, you're supposed to look like what you're doing all the time, so much so that people pretend. And that's the thing about real Eros. Around the edges, everyone can pretend. We let everyone pretend. You have to, because they have this habit of pretending. But when you get into the real stuff, when there's a room and Eros is happening in that room, you don't get in that room with any falsehoods. Falsehoods are this, they're too big to make it through that door. Only the real stuff. And then you discover, oh, I'm just a little guy. But I'll tell you, it is much better to be a little guy inside the room, a little lady inside of the room, rather than a big, hot mama outside the room, because here you always have to pretend, you always have to fake it. And then you finally enter the place where you don't have to fake it. And so, but, graciousness really, and the other thing is, we're so trained to be competitive with other women that we either fawn, project authority and rely on them, or compete. Those are the three things that we know. Not one of those works in the realm of Eros. The only thing that works is connect. It's the only thing that works. How do you connect? You connect. That's what I'm going to say. And then it's going to be like, I don't understand. Get in arousal. It's written on the wall. All of those things that you hear to do that you don't do, like make the first move. Oh, but I'll look weak if I make the first move. No, if there is somebody sitting there with big titties filled with milk, you make the first move to go get it. You be gracious. You make her life better. You let her know that your participation in her life is going to enhance her world. And so what does she care about? What she cares about, obviously or apparently, is all other women having what she has. So you guarantee that happens. She apparently would care about her conduit being clean and clear and generous and appreciative. So you're going to send him back to her that way. There are certain things, you're going to be communicating your arousal to her. Don't make her ask. Don't make her ask. That's just silly. But see, those are the rules outside the room. Outside the room, people have to pull it, and because outside of the room, if you have a pussy and you give up your pussy, you are doing somebody a great favor. That's the thing. Now, mind you, it is pussy that has no idea what to do. It is useless pussy, but it's considered very fancy because it can be projected on in the outside world. When you enter with an untrained vagina, an untrained set of genitals, pussy, there's no good word for it, then no, you don't get any special privilege. It's not like spectacular, like some women, any woman walking into my realm, it's nothing spectacular. There's either that she should be standing next to me giving milk, or there's milk that she needs. That's really all it is. In order to reach the evolution to come stand next to me to distribute milk. That's what we're doing, and we're having fun along the way, and kindness along the way. But kindness is very different from politeness. Kindness is a generosity of heart. It's letting somebody feel their impact on you, especially their positive impact on you, in such a way that you even risk, looking needy or not looking cool, or all of those things. You err on the side of generosity until you learn how to do it, because we're trained to be withholding and stingy, right? So that's how you be. Those are some of the lessons for a good two, and the lessons for a good one is you just can't take it personally. You can't take it personally, and you can't let go. That's the other thing. I've been a one many times, and in that position, you just watch your conduit do really stupid things, and so you just say, "Go do it. I'm done," right? But then he has a certain amount of power, and you are releasing an ignorant person into the world with a lot of power to go and feast on an innocent woman, who isn't so innocent, by the way, but that's okay. Her klesha aren't so innocent. She might be innocent. Her klesha aren't. They are wicked. And so, that's your rule number one. And rule number two is you have to be thorough. You have to thoroughly clean up After I was just saying to my consort, anytime we talk about an experience, we're hoping that this is less so. Okay. But he just thinks like, woo, it's going to be, killer. And I think, okay, this is what it's going to take to set it up. This is what it's going to take to ensure that this woman gets what she needs. This is what it's going to take, to ensure that we both have the level of attention and that we have the connection to carry her through an experience. And, it's just all calculation. And then after, I think, how do you clean the house up? From that experience, how do you draw out anything that may have gotten stuck? How do you see what the next desire that's arising in her is? How do you make sure that it's integrated, whatever just happened? How do you know when to close up shop in such a way that nobody feels that there's rejection, but you end at the peak? How do you, all of these things? So inside of, one of the things that I was going to talk about yesterday that I'll talk about right now is, we teach a comm course. We don't do it right now. We don't teach anything, but we used to. And in the comm course, there's something called, So two people sit across from each other. And you do what's called, you get in session. You look at each other's eyes. And then this kind of feeling of fuzzy, delightful intimacy develops. And then inside of that, you're the person, right? And so you have a list of things that you have to be reading, like Alice went to the store with a cat. Alice went to the store with a cat. They're nonsense things because those aren't what matters. What matters is, can you stay in relaxed, expansive, stable, steady attention in such a way that your face doesn't give up what are called vias, that your face doesn't send out its own messages. And so this person will say, stop, you blinked. Then when they stop blinking, you say, okay, start. And then they'll keep reading and saying it, and you'll stop, your mouth twitched. Okay, start. And then they go back into the relaxed state until at the end of the day, you're high as a kite, but you've discovered this new way of not having sort of automated expression on your face, and you re-own something powerful in your communication. This is all very interesting, but at the end of the day, you have something that's called the bull baiting exercise. You're trying to draw the bull out of the person who's just trying to sit there and be relaxed and not have vias. So you're increasing the volume at every exercise. This person comes and they just start what we call hexing. They start like affirming that person's insecurities, or like if it's a dude who loves tits and he loses concentration as soon as he sees tits, she lifts her shirt. Or, if he has this thing where, he's really jealous or something, then she'll, whisper in his ear, like, it seems like your girlfriend's falling in love with her partner. What's going on over here? Just whatever to get, all those things, those triggers that we try to avoid, you're deliberately trying to trigger them while at the same time have somebody have to not have any facial expressions. It is awesome. It is an awesome experience. And what you discover on the spiritual path, and this is, sort of the spoiler alert that nobody watches the movie, or the spoiler alert this far, sex is just bull baiting on the spiritual path. It's just a really good bull baiter. It is just a really good way to trigger everything. It's no better or worse than anything else. We apply all of this meaning because it has, the potential for high sensation, and then we have all these biblical charges that we added to it. It's just a nice thing. It's like, you eat pizza, have sex. It's no different, but we put all of this really intense meaning on it. And so that makes it a really good bull baiter. And so you can use it to work with your triggers. You can use it in that same way to learn to be more relaxed, more clear, more stable in the face of high sensation, of emotional and psychic lures, of the feeling that you're going to fall in love, or the feeling that you must have this person, all of that, that's just bull baiting. That's nothing. But it's something that if you're triggered by it, first of all, your bull baiter person should be bull baiting you more. But if you're triggered by it, then you now know what will pull you out of flight. All of these things are just things that pull you out of flight. And when you're in a sexual arena, you have a more salient group of things that will pull you out of flight, instinctual karmas, salient things that will pull you out of flight, and a number of things that will pull you out of flight. It's like, if you just go to the grocery store, some things might pull you out of flight. You have one makeout. You're in big trouble. Even just like, I don't like the smell of his deodorant or lack thereof. Like, it's just so many things can pull you out of flight, right? How many women have had sex and not been there for it because they were out of flight, right? And how many men have had sex and not been there because they weren't in flight? They were just pumping away and like totally disconnected from the experience. That just means the bull baiter got you. So we just increase the intensity of things that you have to remain conscious through. So in the same way, the bull baiting exercise happens at the end of the day of the calm course, the bull baiting exercise of sex happens at the end of the day of spirituality. It's just the most intense practice that you can possibly go into, and stay relaxed, stable, expansive, and which is aroused, which some people say is synonymous with enlightenment, but I don't. Because I like to have a good time. Okay, I think that's good for now.
We will go to reflections, and we'll start with anyone in the room or anyone online. We'll start with Leah.
I see not a lot of reflections today. Is that right? It's like, Nicole, go back to AI.
Leah.
There's my Leah girl.
Hi. I love this talk so much. It was just such a beautiful instruction manual for probably just a more truthful, nature-based way of relating that I've been groping in the dark for. And I grew out of the other way and have been in this awkward transition. Like, what am I groping so hard for? Like, it's not what I had, but it was what is this groping? What am I? And then I feel like I don't know, I just feel like it's brilliant. And we need to make a Wikipedia entry and introduce it to the language.
I love you. Well, my understanding, the reports that I've heard is you are a superb number 2 when you're a number 2. I think just even on the Zooms, you exhibit what a number 2 might do very well. Like, I don't know if anybody knows this, but not only does she say the words, but she effuses in a very vulnerable way the fact that she's been positively impacted. And from that, you just want to pour on her, so much so that you have to stop yourself so you don't knock her out. But that's the problem with Leah. But that's the other thing, is that she also doesn't pretend like she could take more than she can. So then she can continually just keep coming back and get more expansive every time. That is an excellent example of how a number 2 would be.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we'll go to Becca.
Hi.
Hi.
Hi. I'm sharing partly because I had this big aha from one of the last 2 talks you gave about you keep saying stay in arousal. Yeah. And I'm like, okay, but getting grasp of, so what is arousal? And then you actually said that fear is arousal.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's huge opening for me. I'm scared so much of the time. Oh, I'm in arousal. It's like a whole reframe,
That's
And it's
good.
why I'm sure I'm always nervous, to share, even to do a reflection, And I thought, oh, I got to get in arousal, right now. Parent getting an arousal, and I my whole life I always taught my students we'd have like a week or two at the beginning of the year. You have to risk to learn.
That's
I
right.
never really connected that with arousal, but in fact, when I was struggling through my retirement, and it was right before I signed up for art school, I said to my friend, I know what's wrong. I'm just not risking, but now this new view is like, that's arousal. I'm not in arousal. And
That's
so it's
right.
like, whoa, click, 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 So I
You
would
know
say,
what? Sometime might be fun. I don't know if you'd ever want to do this. And this is not a pressure thing. This is just if it's ever fun. It would be
Yeah.
great to have you do a presentation on arousal because I would love to hear it in the accessible way that you bite size it in a way that I can't. I'd love to see, but no pressure now. And should it ever arise as something that sounds pleasurable?
no, I'll practice on my live.
Okay, good. I'd love that.
But I just want to, at the beginning, I was kind of nervous when you were saying, "Oh my gosh, you're not going to understand this," and that whole thing that you said, preppiness. Anyway, I just thought to say you're a great Olympic coach.
Oh, see, that was a great two right there.
And that Olympic coaches give difficult assignments, and that again, it just points to all the same thing, of taking the risk. No.
That's right. That's it exactly. See?
Thank you.
You do the rich synopsis. Thank you.
Thanks, Becca. Then we'll go to Russell.
Good morning.
Good afternoon.
Afternoon, as the case may be, on EST or something like that. Things I've never heard before. If you are using an untrained vagina,
Russell, where you been hanging out, baby?
I mean, it's not like it's like a foreign concept. It's just I've just never actually heard it voiced. Other great things err on the side of generosity, and then this fairly new thing that nodes would be women and men would be conduits, and a woman uses a man to transmit. A woman with more uses a man to transmit to a woman who has less, and it's like, whoa, is that a paradigm that is not obvious until you have some practice in Eros? I just think that's, and then when you have that, or when you have that concept, then when you're pulled out of flight, and then finally just get in arousal, and it's written on the walls.
Something that you do really well for me, because I don't know what gets picked up out there. I just send it. You let me know right there. You just said all the key points of my talk. So I'm clear that it can be understood.
Some people, I'm permission for it to be understood. Yes.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yours.
Next, we'll go to Roy.
Hey, everybody. And hi, Nicole. Great to be
Hi.
here. I'm calling in from Halifax, Nova Scotia, Canada.
Really?
Way up
Wonderful. Land of the enlightened.
And what a treat to be here. With Russell, I would agree that today one of the things that really struck me was the idea of being a conduit. You said something really interesting at one point about when a one and a two or two women come together, without the conduit, there's this sort of I don't know what the word would be, but a clinging, a lock. And that really struck me as important to understand the role of the conduit, not in and of itself for itself, but as the dynamic, as part of that energy. And so then, like, even with friendships, non-sexual engagements, family,
That's right.
all places where we create a buffer and room for energy to move. I think I've experienced that, but I've also seen when it's not there.
That's right. Both. You've seen both. Exactly. This is, this is really codependence in a sense, when it just locks and it just eats itself until it runs out. But I'll say with you, as well as what I just said to Russell, the way that you gave me feedback, I'm very pleased that I feel very heard. Thank you.
My pleasure. Good to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, pleasure.
We'll go to Matthias.
Here he is. Here he is.
Okay.
I think he might have a prop.
Sitting under the Bodhi tree, hands grabbing the 2 live wires. Here comes the bull.
Well, when you come to New York, we're going to do a talk together. I feel like if we were talking together, nobody would understand what we said. But we would be delighted. Thank you. Thank you.
Next, we have Lindsay.
Lindsay.
Hi. This is I think it was like a year and a half ago when we were on the land. I had something brutal happen with a friend of mine, and I was telling the story, and you had said, I can't remember your exact words, but it was you were like, you were so close to being able to hold this sensation, and it was just overflowing constantly. And yeah, this week I got a similar piece of news about another person I love dearly, and it was my bull baiter, to say. And the strangest thing happened. I was able to just like sit above it without latching.
Brilliant.
Tragic story, but also without cutting it off.
That's
like
right.
I like refound the love, and I didn't hate myself for loving that person, even though they wanted to die. But I could hold it without collapsing. And I was like, oh, this was what she was talking about.
That's it. Well, you are now officially an edge walker. That's nice to see you here. True pleasure.
Thank you.
And our final reflection is from Bex.
I have this image of the woman with the overflowing breasts, and that's the last woman you want to disturb and pull on. It's like she's feeding on these babies, like go to her. That's a really fantastic piece. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. Sister. It's my sister. Well, you have nobody on.
I've got a reflection. Wait, was there something else you were looking for? Our Instagram. Instagram.
It's okay. It's okay. It's okay. Go ahead, honey.
Oh, that was just mind blowing. It was just mind blowing. And as you were speaking, the room got clearer and more still, and like this crystalline kind of light came over, and it was just beautiful, like humbling, like what's the word? Revealing. Just everything was amazing.
Thank you. That's really, I want to take that one in. I felt that. All right. I won't be here tomorrow, but I will be here Thursday. So I hope to see you then.